And so also with God, once we get saved, we begin to have an experiential relationship with Him, or at least we have the option of that. And the more that we allow God to work in our hearts and in our lives, we experience His fidelity, we experience His work and His Spirit, and then we begin to trust Him. Peter, although having a life of both victory and defeat, of walking on water and sinking, of preaching the gospel and 3,000 people getting saved, and then being withstood to the face by Paul and said, "You're being a hypocrite," Peter had a life of experience. For, denying Jesus 3 times, being reinstated by a campfire on the beach 3 times. He had experienced God, and so he comes to this particular place, the second time he's been in prison, and what does he do? He racks out. He goes to sleep. Again, it's just like we said last week, we're not just saying you should go to sleep if you're having hard times, or you should just have peace, because that's not real. That's not how human beings work. But instead to say, I have walked with God, I'm inviting His Spirit into my life, I now have this peace that defies understanding, and I can be at rest in this place. This whole teaching, these 2 segments, 2 Sundays that we've done, really revolves around the idea is that life, for the most part, with Jesus, it's a journey. It takes time. It takes experience. It takes being forgiven. Now, there were examples. The thief on the cross, well, his life experience was like 3 hours with Jesus. But in 3 hours, what did he experience? Forgiveness, comfort, promise, right? And so he came to a place of mocking Jesus, to a place of receiving Jesus, to a place of experiencing Jesus, right? So no matter how long the length of our walk with Jesus, it really works the same. Not discounting miraculous times or something like that, but that Peter comes to this place of being able to rest because he's experienced Christ both in the high times and in the low times as being faithful and being kind and as taking care of him. Then in verse 7, we read that command, and he says there, the angel, it says, "Behold, an angel of the Lord stood next to him, and a light shone in the cell, and he struck Peter on the side and woke him, saying, 'Get up quickly,' and the chains fell off." The chains were still on when the command went out. And that's important. And this is something I've been thinking a ton about, actually, in my own life and in the Scripture and things like that. And even though I worry about being too repetitive with things, that here's this deal. So many of us are, us maybe, I don't know where you're at. I don't want to accuse somebody of something they're not doing. But for many of us, we're kind of in this place where we're sitting on the couch of our spiritual life and we're just waiting to be different. And you can take any sin. It can be anxiety, it can be anger, it can be unforgiveness, it can be, covetousness, lust, whatever it is. And we're just kind of sitting on the couch, and God is speaking to our hearts, and He's saying, "Get up and walk with me through this." And we're just going, when I feel different, then I will walk with you. When you take these chains off, or I feel like these chains are off, then I will stand up and obey you in the thing that you've called me to do. And honestly, it's the complete opposite of how sanctification works. Sanctification does not usually work in the sense that one day I just don't want to sin anymore. I just wake up, I have that magical cup of coffee where I get my cream and coffee mix just perfect, and then all of a sudden there's a halo, and I just go, you know what? God is so good, I'm never sinning again. That's not the human experience. The human experience is not to try to quit when we're behind. But in fact, what we do is we say, this is the last porn I'm going to watch. This is the last time I'm going to do this. I feel like I have to watch this. This comforts me. I'll just do this, and then I'll be done. This is the last drink I'm going to have. I'll forgive that person later. I'll stop worrying about, if I don't worry about the stuff in my life, then who will? Someday God will just make me not worry. Someday I'll just stop lusting. Someday I'll just stop coveting. I'll keep neglecting church. I'll keep doing what I want to do to make sure that I'm financially taken care of. And then someday God will just make me not worry about that. And then I'll move on with my life and I won't worry about that. But that is never how humanity works, is it? And it's weird because sometimes whether it's slaking a lust or whether it's trying to slake an anxiety by indulging in a 3-hour internet search of why I'm right or whatever it might be, it always comes back around. I always get anxious again. I'm always filled with fear again. I always reject forgiveness for someone again. And so one of the things that we have to realize is that God is calling us to a supernatural walk to get up, to leave that stuff behind, not worry about the chains that are upon us, the besetting sin which so easily entangles us, as Hebrews tells us, but to stand up and begin moving in the direction that God is calling us. And the promise is when we begin that move, that's when the chains come off. It's not just by sitting around hoping that one day that they will. So today we're going to pick up in verse 8, and we're going to talk about a few more points here that Peter shows us through metaphor about how we can be victorious Christians and begin our walk towards freedom. And it says there in verse 8, "And the angel said to him, 'Dress yourself and put on your sandals.' And he did so. And he said to him, 'Wrap your cloak around you and follow me.'" And it's a little bit of the same idea. And it's this. He says, you know what? You need to dress yourself and you need to put on your sandals. You have to get ready for the miracle. You have to be prepared for it. Am I saying that God never does something supernaturally that we don't expect it? No, I'm not saying that. Am I going to put God in a box and say, he'll never do anything great unless you do this? No. He's so mighty and he's so merciful, and I have to admit some of the most humbling blessings that have occurred in my life have not been at times of obedience, but times of disobedience, times of rage, times where I feel lost and upset with God or whatever it might be. But what I am saying is that on the daily, if we want to see ourselves get changed, if we want to walk in all that God has for us, we can't just keep sitting back and doing nothing about it. In this case, he says, hey, you need to be clothed. And again, to kind of go back to the why question, why didn't he just snap his fingers and make him clothed? Why did he say, put your cloak on too? Why couldn't he carry his cloak? What if Peter had just said, hey, I'll put my clothes on, but I don't feel like carrying my cloak or wearing my cloak. I'd rather carry it. Don't we do that with God? God says, hey, I'd like you to do this. We say, well, how about this instead? You've asked for A, but I'm willing to meet you at B, and I'm definitely not doing C. So I know you want me to put the cloak on, but I don't know what the weather is like outside. I don't even know if I'm actually even being made free right now. I kind of think this is just kind of a vision of what could happen. So if I put my cloak on and the guards see that, and then I try to move out, like they might be upset at me. I could get a whooping for putting the cloak on when I shouldn't. I know you dropped the chains off, but it just feels, is it wool? Is it scratchy? I don't know if I really want to do this. Isn't it just better if I just carry it? I know you said to do that, but I think it'll be better if I just carry it. Who's it going to hurt if I just carry it? What do you care, angel? You got sent here to serve me. I'll just carry it. And that's how we treat God. You've said this. You've asked me to do this, but you know what? I'll meet you halfway, but I'm actually going to insist on this. And what happens is we do that sometimes, and then we come back and we retreat to this place of go and say, why isn't all that I want my life to be what it is? Why isn't God doing everything in my life that I want him to do? Why am I not being changed? Why is it that these things don't work out in my life? Or even worse, you get outside, it's freezing cold, and you go, God, why didn't you tell me it was cold? I would have put my cloak on. But because he didn't tell us the reason, we reject the way. And it's heartbreaking, isn't it? When you see that in yourself, when you see that in others. One of the things that he's calling us to do, if we're going to experience freedom on the daily, we have to do what he calls us to do. We have to respond to it.